4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. May the Lord's blessing shine down upon all of you on this auspicious occasion of the Good Friday. I'm Dr. Tulika Jha, Clinical Secretary of the Bengal Obs and Gynae Society, and I welcome you all to the 36th Dr. Sudhir Chandra Bose Memorial Oration. Along with the oration, we also have a clinical meeting with a very interesting talk by Dr. Leela Vyas from Jaipur and an interesting case discussion, case presentation by a young and upcoming gynecologist, Dr. Divya, who is a PGT in CSS in Chittaranjan Seva Sadhan. And the orator for the evening is none other than Dr. Alpesh Gandhi, President FOGSI. And to start the proceedings, I would like to invite our President BOGS, Dr. Bhaskar Pal, to deliver his welcome address. Over to you, Bhaskar da.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Tulika. I take great pleasure in inviting and welcoming all of you to this clinical meeting and oration. My sincere gratitude to Dr. Alpesh Gandhi, President FOGSI, for accepting our invitation to deliver the oration. Traditionally, the FOGSI President delivers the Dr. DC Datta Memorial Oration at the Boxcon, but unfortunately, we didn't have a Boxcon during the tenure of Dr. Gandhi. So we invited him to deliver this oration virtually and he agreed. I'm also honored to have my dear friend, Dr. Leela Vyas, to deliver a topic on a very neglected subject, and that is setting up of a vulval clinic. The time we had the last CME of Bengal Obstetric Society and the COVID situation was gradually improving, and we were hoping that somewhere in April we would be able to resume physical meetings. Unfortunately, since then, India has seen a second wave which has hit the state of Maharashtra badly, and other states are gradually catching up. Doesn't look like we will be able to resume physical meetings at least for another month or two and have to continue with the virtual meetings. I understand that it is difficult, but please understand that we still remember, please remember that we still need to wear our mask, maintain our distances, and maintain hand hygiene, because we do not know how far protection the current vaccines will give us against the new strains. With this, I will request Dr. Tulika Jha to carry on with the proceedings of this evening.
Hello, unmute.
Tulika, you
unmute.
Sorry for that. Thank you, Dr. Bhaskar Pal, for your short and sweet address. And we now move on to the academic part of the program. In the very beginning, we have the clinical meeting, and we start by inviting the chairs for the session. The chairpersons are Dr. Hiralal Kunar and Dr. Sudeep Chakraborty. Dr. Hiralal Kunar, next slide. Huh? Dr. Hiralal Kunar is a very senior teacher and a very eminent gynecologist of the state and known all over India. He's a member of the Oncology Committee of AOFOG, and he was the FOGSI representative of AOFOG 2018 and 19. He was the chairman of the ICOG in 2013. He's the national corresponding editor of the JOGI and editor-in-chief of ISOPARP. He was the president of our own society in 2008, 2009. He was vice president of the FOGSI in 2008, and he's the recipient of the award Pride of FOGSI in 2019 for exemplary work towards upliftment of women's health in India. And he's the author of a very famous textbook of obstetrics and gynecology, and also manual obstetrics and gynae for PGs, which is actually 3 books I'm talking about. And he's a professor in KPC Medical College, Kolkata. Welcome, Dr. Hiralal Kunar, to this clinical meeting. I now welcome Dr. Sudeep Chakraborty, who is a consultant obstetrician and gynecologist, and also a very eminent person in our, of our society and our city. He's the past vice president of FOGSI. He's the past president of the Bengal Obs and Gynae Society and a past president of ISOPARP. Welcome, Dr. Sudeep Chakraborty. And I hand over the session to the chairpersons, Dr. Hiralal Kunar and Dr. Sudeep Chakraborty. Just one thing before we start, we will have questions after each speaker because the two cases are different and unrelated to each other. So I would just like to remind the chairpersons that we will have questions after each speaker, and I'll help you with the question answer session. So over to you, Hiralalda and Shrutipta.
Sir, Professor Chakraborty, are you ready to start?
Carry on.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thanks to President, Secretary, Bengal Afghan Society and Tolika for having this CME in association with that of the Dr. Sudip Chandra Bose Memorial Audition. It is our great pleasure. Without any much of time, we have got a case presentation, very interesting to my mind. And the case presentation would be made by our younger colleague, Dr. Dibba S. And she is the second year postgraduate trainee at CRSS Institute, postgraduate trainee. And the topic of this evening is very interesting. Honestly speaking, XY with uterus, is cyclical bleeding possible? It's really interesting, Dr. Dibba. We are all interested to listen to you carefully. Obviously, if time permits, we'll go for the discussion. So I would request you, Dr. Dibba, to go for this presentation. My co-chairperson, Professor Chakraborty, has joined me. So, sir, you would like to introduce anything more?
Not yet. Let her finish, then we'll talk.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Good evening, everybody. When a conflict between phenotype and genotype bring a real misery for a teenager girl during her blooming period, we the clinician also feel very much perplexed. In this context, I am Dr. Divya S., second year MS PGT from CSS College of Obs, Gynae and Child Health, taking the honor to present a unique and very rare case in front of this August gathering. My presentation is XY with uterus, is cyclical bleeding possible? My patient is a 17-year-old student from West Bengal, presented to OPD with absence of breast development and non-initiation of menstruation beyond the expected age. She's 17 years old. There is no history of emotional upset or excessive exercise, no history of chemotherapy or radiotherapy. There's no features of hypothyroidism or no significant past or family history. On clinical examination, in general examination, her height is normal, build and nutrition is average, and vitals are normal, systemic examination within normal limit. On local examination, her breast development is of TANA stage 1, as you can see here, prepubertal state with no palpable breast tissue, alveolar less than 2 centimeter. Axillary hair growth is adequate. No shield chest, no cubitus valgus.
তোলা হয়েছে 1997.
Pubic hair present of TANA stage 3. On external genitalia is feminine type with clitoromegaly, same as of a small penis. With clitoral index is 50 millimeter square. Labia majora, labia minora normal. Urethral orifice present separately below the clitoris here. And hymen present. Vaginal leg, so far as we probed with the catheter, seems to be patent and of adequate length. Small uterus palpable on rectal examination. In investigation, radiological investigation shown bilateral small ovaries, hypoplastic uterus, and other findings were normal. The hormonal assay, as you can see, serum FSH and LS level is increased. So it is a hypergonadotrophic state. And the serum estradiol level is substantially low, and but testosterone level is almost near male level. Here the serum DHEAS and serum 17-hydroxyprogesterone marginally rise, so the adrenal cause of increased androgen levels are excluded. So the source of the testosterone may be from hilar cells of streak gonad, that is under influence of high gonadotrophins, or maybe early initiation of neoplastic change. So we waited eagerly for chromosomal study report to proceed further. The karyotyping came as 46XY. To summarize, our case is 17-year-old girl reared as female presented with complaints of primary amenorrhea. On examination, she had average build, normal stature, presence of axillary and pubic hair, non-development of breast. On genital examination, she had female external genitalia with enlarged clitoris, USG report showing hypoplastic uterus and bilateral small ovaries. On investigation, her FSH LH level were raised, estradiol is decreased, testosterone level in male range, karyotyping shown 46XY pattern. So it appears to be a case of pure gonadal dysgenesis with XY chromosomal pattern, that is Swyer syndrome in a 17-year-old girl. Swyer syndrome is a rare cause of disorder of sex development. Its incidence is 1 in 80,000. First described by Swyer in 1955, is caused by an error in sex determination during the course of embryogenesis. Patient with Swyer syndrome present with an incomplete or absent masculinization due to abnormalities in the production of testosterone and Mullerian inhibitor factor. Molecular and genetic abnormalities associated with Swyer syndrome include mutation in all these genes, and SRY gene is deleted approximately 10 to 15% and mutated in another 10 to 15%. Swyer syndrome patients are of normal height with normal axillary and pubic hair development. External genitalia are typical of female. Upper part of vagina and uterus is small or rudimentary. Gonads are dysgenetic strips composed of only fibrous tissue. They usually do not exhibit hormonal function and gametogenesis. The gonada are at high risk of gonadal tumors like gonadoblastoma and or dysgerminoma. Principles of management. Individualized approach with counseling. Consideration of the sex of rearing. Addressing the problem of intra-abdominal streak gonad with rising testosterone level. And she also had a hoarseness of voice when she came last time to our OPD. Development of secondary sexual character with hormonal supplements. Initiation of cyclical withdrawal bleeding after preparation of endometrium. Coital function restoration is needed by progressive vaginal dilatation or surgical correction. Reproductive function by ovum donation and surrogacy. Reproductive function, though remote and seems to be very difficult, if it is achieved, it will be ultimate success. So, plan of management for our cases, gonadectomy should be done first to save her from consequence of malignant transformation. Then supplementation of estrogen with conjugated estrogen for this dose for breast development and endometrial proliferation, close surveillance. After sufficient endometrial proliferation or whenever breakthrough bleeding occurs, addition of progesterone to initiate cyclical withdrawal bleeding. Clitoroplasty, the plastic genital surgery keeping in mind the intricate nerve supply of the clitoris. We have to be very careful so that there is no fibrosis or entanglement below the clitoris near G point. Thank you all for your patience hearing. Now I am opening the case for discussion among the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Divya. Quite interesting. Definitely, I believe there would be lots of questions. Let us see. Tulika, have you got any questions?
There is one question from Dr. Muzaffar Hussain. What was the AMH level of this patient? Divya, I think I think this case was under Ram Prasad Dey. So Divya, or if Ram also has something to say, what Divya, did you get an AMH level done for this patient?
No, ma'am. We have.
Okay.
We are actually she's on the process of treatment. We are doing.
And she's under evaluation.
And we will do later on.
Okay. Ram.
Actually,
Dr. Ram Prasad, would you want to say something about the case?
No, that patient has just, we are doing just workup of this patient. It is a patient although he has read out that it is a hypoplastic uterus, but uterus dimension is quite good. It is 7 centimeter by 4 centimeter into 2.5 centimeter. So I hope that this has a good uterus, and we can, and the problem is everyone know that it is XY gonad. So what we have planned, we can do the, after counseling of the patients with the other investigation, thyroid function is normal. We have planned for, we can go for the laparoscopy gonadectomy, followed by the involvement of the plastic surgeon, that plastic resource and the clitoris, and doing put into patient into the HRT. Initially, the conjugated estrogen for quite a long period, so that the estrogen can find the endometrium. Subsequently, with progesterone, so he has come for the menstrual function to rest. It will not be a menstrual function, but we can have a scope for the cyclical bleeding. And later on, we can think he's not married. I think the vagina is adequate, so there will be no problem of vital function. And the later on the reproductive function, what can be done later on, that will be helpful.
Dr. Shalupriya wants to know, could this be a diagnosis of 5-alpha reductase deficiency?
No, ma'am. Then there won't be any uterus inside it. 5-alpha
Yes.
reductase actually converts testosterone into
So
dihydrotestosterone.
the axillary and pubic hair is have the adequate axillary and pubic hair in this patient.
Huh.
Yes.
Breast development are also testicular feminization, this well-developed breast. They are nice looking girls, very attracting looking girls there. So it is.
Data
Uh.
at the corner of Sunny Park.
Dr.
I
Paul,
think
you want
there
to
is
say
another
anything?
question. With XY, Dr. Vibha Gehlot wants to know, with XY chromosomes and hoarse voice, patient wanted to be raised as women. This is a question. As a woman, because I think the sex of rearing was female.
Yes, he has
So-
been the sex rearing is a very vital issue, but he has been reared as a female, and that his phenotype is absolutely female. Only the genotype is XY. So there is no scope to rear up as a male, because that genitalia and uterus, external genital sex, and the internal sex, that is uterus is there. And he also reared up as a female child in the age of 70, past I think Madhyamik. So there is no scope to rear up as a male child. She must be reared up as a female.
Doctor, was it the first time that in your institute she was diagnosed to be this? Diagnosis, yeah.
Yes. He has first time comes as with a staff that he is a case of primary amenorrhea, and from the history of the family history, he has a little no other I think senior sibling, elder sister major. I will take history. So
Right.
That is why.
Dr. Ashish Kumar Mukhopadhyay wants to know, since when did she develop the hoarseness of her voice?
Actually, I have no idea the patient has developed hoarseness of air. Diva can say.
Divya, Divya,
Developed
from the very
actually,
beginning?
It's developed recently only, like from 10th or something like that.
You have started some the hormonal therapy to her already?
No, sir. No, sir.
You are waiting.
Actual problem is that when I examine the patient remains with the marks, and I also remains with the marks. So whether the patient having hoarseness of voice, I do not know. The Dibba can say that he is taking history closely with the patient, so he has identified. I have no idea that patient has at all a hoarseness of voice.
Oh, and Dr. Rajiv Thal wants to know, is this condition genetically inherited? Divya? Is this condition genetically inherited?
No, there is no family history.
Yes, so there is a chance of runs in the family is not supposed to be as like as the XY or the androgen synthesis.
Yeah,
There is a litoscope, there is a mutation in the gene.
It is a mutation. Absolutely, it is the mutation in the genes of the SRY.
Runs in the family is not.
Yeah, not always. Yeah, it may be an incident, but it is not that. But it is the mutation of the especially the SRY gene. But I don't know whether you would be able to go for this further of this study regarding the gene study. You know that SRY gene may be inactivated, or sometimes that SOX9 may be inactivated. You know, there are the male differentiating gonads, the genes. There are single genes are there. So it is a good case, really, really rare, and Dibba has got the good opportunity of getting the case organized. And
we have full picture of the patient, but I didn't display here because of.
Okay, I think just one last question. How from Dr. Muzaffar Hussain, how will you explain the clitoromegaly in Swires syndrome?
Actually, ma'am, there is actually her testosterone level is now like male level. So it may be, I already explained that it may be from the hilar cells of streak gonad due to under influence of high gonadotrophins. Maybe because of that may be causing the hoarseness of voice as well
and the clitoromegaly.
I'm thinking that.
No, it is the receptor sensitivity. You know, sometimes the adrenal androgens, even if the small amount is there, sometimes the tissue may be sensitive. It is a very type of abnormality. Once things goes wrong, the tissue sensitivity different types. So not always the telltale picture we get that we expect from the book or the literature. May not be all the cases may not be the similar type of presentation. It is a rare type of abnormality, and different varied presentations could be there. This is our experience also seeing such cases.
Yes, exactly. So I think there are no more questions, and we can move on to the
And
next topic.
Only one question, Deepa. What is the prospect of her getting the mens, and if she thinks of baby? Think in a different perspective, just for discussion as you are appearing this exam. Talk about this a little bit.
What about has menstruation?
Yeah. So
we
first tell us about the menstruation, prospect of menstruation getting back, and that of if she desires to be with all your support. You are a good doctor, so with all your support, she desires to get a baby also.
Yes, yes, sir. Menstruation, there won't be any physiological menstruation. It will be always withdrawal bleeding.
Absolutely.
We
Absolutely.
can do it by giving estrogen, and after reaching a sufficient endometrial thickness, we can give her withdrawal bleeding by using progesterone.
Great. Yeah, correct. Absolutely.
And for reproductive function, we can go for surrogacy as well
Yeah.
as IVF and all.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. She can have a baby if she likes.
If-
Obviously, with all the care up under your supervision, she can have the baby. That's the good news. Great. Thank you so
So,
much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Just two comments I would like to share, because it has come from the audience, and I think it is important for Divya to know. First is from Dr. Amit Basu, that instead of writing her name, you could have written XY for privacy reasons. And second point is Dr. Ashish Mukherjee mentioned that the absence of the second X chromosome is important in this case. That is an important thing. And so there were two comments in the box.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you. Hiralalda, Shudipta.
Sir has got anything to say?
I have one question to ask also.
Yes, sir.
Common is the malignant change in the gonad.
She has mentioned already that they are planning to go for the gonadectomy. Yeah.
How common is it?
All right.
Sir, 30 to 40% chances of gonadoblastoma. I think
It is not that much high. It is usually around 20-25%. Yeah.
Okay.
But it varies. You know, different observers have mentioned different. Literature is also different. Very type of presentations are there. Possibility, but gonadectomy is the recommendation.
Yes.
And she should have a gonadectomy.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We are planning for
Please
that.
don't put any ideas about a child in her head.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tulika?
Tulika has gone for a break.
Break.
No, not at all.
Cup of tea.
No. You can proceed with the next. You can call upon
Right,
the
you are.
guest
Yeah.
speaker.
Sir.
You call the next person.
Right, you are. Thank you, sir. So, really, we thanks Dr. Diba and Dr. Dey as we came to know that he was the consultant in charge of the patient. This is a rare case. We are very happy to have this discussion and to know about this such type of cases. Now we will move on to our next speaker. Next speaker, as our president has already said, very close to us, close to our society, Dr. Leela Vyas from Jaipur. And he is the past vice president of Foxy, now chairperson of ISAR 2020. And Madam would be speaking. He is a professor of SMS Medical College, Jaipur. It happened that my personal relationship as an examiner to Jaipur SMS. So often we meet there, and also in the national platform. And Madam is a very keen academician, very many presentations that I have attended. And Madam would be speaking on the topic of setting up a vulval clinic. Right, our president has already introduced. Really, this is a bit of neglected subject, and especially being oncology and that of this vulval topic, and many areas abnormalities that we face and often get confused regarding this diagnosis and the treatment. So it is great that we would be having much of information regarding the vulval diseases and setting up a vulval clinic so that our members may be interested to introduce such sort of clinic and treatment. So with this, I introduce Dr. Leela Vyas for her presentation.
Good evening, everyone. At the outset, I convey my thanks to Bengal Obs and Gynae Society, Dr. Bhaskar, for inviting me and whole team there. And Dr. Hiralal Kunal, thank you very much for your nice words. And I don't know when we will meet physically, we'll all.
That's true, really.
The webinar, we are in touch with each other.
Yeah.
And sir, we all, my students are fan of you. Whenever you come for the as an examiner, always say, nahi, Hiralal sir, we got some, means if they were not able to answer, and he used to explain each and everything. And thank you, Dr. Kunal, and thank you, Bengal Obstetrics and Gynae Society, for giving this opportunity. And actually, which we were talking about this topic, which is actually neglected one. And if we go with the things, we never thought of that this part of genital tract can be taken care of. So this setting of vulval clinic, we all know that has come from the super specialty. And we all know different part of genital tract has been taken by the different specialists. But in our gynae, there is no formal course for the any super specialty part. So all of our, as we are gaining our more and more experience, we are able to more and more cases, we come to know that how it is important. So in a medical college or in a tertiary care hospital, we can plan a different settings for the different diseases, so the patients will get benefited. So if we talk about that, why we want to go for the specific conditions, this vulva, yes, definitely it is neglected, because in COVID times, especially, nobody wants to see the patients. They coming with the itching, yes, one or other steroid or the some combination treatment we are prescribing, and they are going back. And then they used to change the doctors, or they in medical college come to the another OPD day, and that okay. So it is our responsibility to just provide appropriate care at the appropriate level. It's not always to refer anyone and all. Anatomically, everyone knows that this is the area of vulva. It involves all these, and there is a skin which is in the vulval area. If you see, it is a skin which is having these hair follicles and sebaceous glands. And again, if you go with the labia minora inner side, then it becomes the non-keratinized skin. And embryologically, we can say it is a part where the endoderm, mesoderm, and ectoderm, all the three layers are there, and multiple body systems, they converge here. If you talk about that, urinary, gastrointestinal, and reproductive, that's why this area has become a very important. And then again, it is having multiple problems, because the multiple functions are in the same area, and one may affect the another one, and then the patient may other later problems. So multiple tissue types are there, multiple functions are there: urination, defecation, menstruation, sexual activity, and birthing, which is the most important part of this obstetrics. And this embryology, why we are important to know this, because the hormonal sensitivity is very important. If we talk about that, vaginal epithelium and urethral epithelium, these are from the same origin of the embryology, then we think of that both are the estrogen effective and all. So like this in the vulva, we have to see this definite means part of that which is arise from that. And then this is the discharge, if you talk about, because the patient comes with the discharge, then even if you are not visualizing the things, you can't see and they give your diagnosis. So it becomes a very important in all our gynae examination. We are starting with the external genitalia and going this. This clitoris, again, one of the important part, just in the last case we have seen, it is all the hormonal effect which gives the size of this clitoris. And a very important thing, another thing is there is the various nerves which are affecting. So the multiple nerve innervations are there. And the various conditions like the vulvodynia or the pain in the vulva, usually the patient comes and we say that I'm in sitting posture and all, even you touch with that, the vulvodynia, the patient comes with the pain and all. They are not allowing us to do the pelvic examination, or even they don't have the simple, the infertility is because of that they have that sensitive area and they are not allowing for the intercourse. So this examination part, so to know about the anatomy of this part is very important. Another thing is, if you are talking that blood vessels, blood supply, the various branches of the pudendal, internal pudendal artery is coming. But one important thing is there is a no large vessel superficial to be supplied in the superficial area. We want to take a vulval biopsy. But it is our routine practice in medical college. We just admit our patients for the vulval biopsy, and if you admit them, they run away because they don't want to stay. So if you know that there is a no greater blood vessel supplying, we can go with a simple in a superficial that forceps. You can see this. This is a simple skin forceps. You just put a local anesthesia here and then put, because this forceps have in front, there is some iron, the blade is there. So metallic blade, which will cut, and finally a small tissue you can take. And all pathologists are agreed that this depth of around 2 to 3 millimeter is sufficient for giving any histopathological a report for that. And if we are talking about the various conditions, the first, if we come with the infections, we all know the genital infections are there. These warts are there, herpes simplex, vulvovaginal candidiasis, bacterial vaginosis. These common infections are there, and that is only with the experience. Everyone, even not going for the testing, you can explain that this type of infection is there. But another condition, which is the inflammatory condition, means so dermatological part comes under in this, especially in the vulval condition, like lichen sclerosis, because the repeated itching, they are coming. One or other antifungal we used to give, the various topical creams we are giving, and finally we are saying that if it is not responding, just it is a routine habit. You go to the dermatologist, and usually the dermatologists are the male, and especially not I am talking about the Bengal, because all are the male gynecologists are there. But in northern part of country, there's especially Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, they are very hesitant to go to the male gynecologist or the male dermatologist, and sometimes they are here and they are just shuttling in between the different consultants. These irritants, allergic, atopic dermatitis, all are there. We have talked about this thing. So there are, and again, as Dr. Kunar said, that malignancies, these are pre-malignant condition, malignant condition that we have to see, and in simple way to take consideration of taking biopsies if the patients are refractory to the treatments or all. So worldwide, the various associations are working on that. British Association, international associations for vulval pain, lichen sclerosis, and these are working on this to have a quality care for all female patients having the vulval problems. In India, also this INSAG, that is Aesthetic and Regenerative Gynecological Society, has been formed. Dr. Naren Malhotra is a presently president, and thus we are working on this and to bring this part of genital tract in front of everyone to give the attention on that. And then if you go with the various sites, this vulvovaginal expert committee, these are the vulvovaginal disorders organizations are there, and these are the various associations are working on. So why they are working, that there should be some standard of care is there, and what should be the level of care, if we, whether the patient, because if only the hygienical position, problems are there, we can make them understand, because these are the 3 parts are there. So how during defecation, how they are cleaning that, because especially after the episiotomy, we always say that you clean from front to back you go. There should not be any particle of fecal matter should be contaminated with your episiotomy. These are the common, which we start with the first year resident, that you have to explain your patients regarding the this perineal care and this episiotomy care, and after delivery, how to take that. Even in the urinary tract infection, we are explaining. So these are the level 1, level 2, or level 3. Level 2 is the primary level care. That is all the OPDs, whether it is in a primary health centers or the district hospitals or in a small OPDs, they can go with that. Then third level is that is specialist care. And this is definitely a big hospital like a medical college or the district hospital. And then the super specialty level, that is, again, we should talk about that. So this is a simple way of in a flow chart. So at the level 3, where in we should, that specialist means dermatologist, if you want to have their help, then we can take gynecologists, definitely they are the pillar of that. Then genitourinary medicine persons we require, the pathology. Now our gynecologists are trained in the urogyne, so they can solve these problems and see all these problems. Then super specialty clinic, yes, different even the cancer specialists are there, urogynecology, then even physiotherapists, you have psychosexual problems, they may have pain management, even the oral medicine has been included in these, because these are the, some patients, super specialty, they come with old age and all. I know the time when we have done, even for the persistent itching, the simple vulvectomy has been done in the patient because they are refractory to every treatment. So like that, if we have investigated not a malignant or not at the pre-malignant, even and especially these conditions are there, so they gives them this treatment. I know that if we are doing the vulvectomy, it is one of the disfigurement, and definitely a surgery is not all this. So there are some guidelines which says that where to and which type of diseases we can treat. So level 2, this is normally the general practitioners, all our gynecologists can see. These are the conditions where there is uncomplicated vulvo-vaginal infections are there, and then follow-up of the simple lichen sclerosis which responded to the treatment. These are the patients can be done. Level 3, yes, definitely. Some refractory cases of the lichen sclerosis, vulvodynia, because we have to spend time and properly investigate and see, and then see. And unifocal VIN, if there is there, definitely we have to go with that. Complicated infections which are not responding. So these are the patients, and then further, if we think, if we are more consultation required, you require more of opinion, then you send to the level 4 care, where they, even the cancer specialists are available. You can send them, and if they can treat in a proper way. So what are the standards for the care of these vulval conditions? And these standards are, again, they gives the guidelines to the practitioner that how do we constitute an area, and in our OPDs that we can perform the vulval examination and then further to treat our patients. So there are main 5 principles are there. So one is the principle of care of women with the vulval conditions, another the multidisciplinary team and models of the care. Yes, we have to make, because even if you are sitting in a private setup, you are in a multidisciplinary hospital, it's very easy to just to contact, and one person should lead that. The senior gynecologist must lead that. If this patient comes, then when in which department we have to refer, and all the residents, if we make some protocol, definitely they will follow these guidelines and send these patients. So patient will be having a proper diagnosis and then further definitely treatment. And so we need an appropriate trained staff. If you are not having our residents, then definitely our staff should be trained. Now all Foxy is working on to our paramedical staff to strengthen them, because they are the pillar of in our practice. So they can be trained in different setup, as the government policy is there. All the paramedical should know how to take the pap smear. So these we can do if we want to do, then we go with that. Clinical governance, yes, somebody has to take responsibility and then start with that. Again, the patient and public involvement in these services are required, because they should have knowledge of these. This is the part where these are the 3 openings are there, and because of all means not proper management, you can have all these problems. And if you have problem, you should speak out. You should not sit at home and just not to ignore it. So these we have already talked about gynecology, dermatology, genitourinary, these are to be required. So normally what we say that is a proper table should be required, and this is always in all OPDs. But if you designate a one, we take in a good hospital or in a medical college, it's not a problem of having a one room or one table and all. So these things are required, the swabs, so you can take, and proper light is there, so you can visualize the lesions and see that, and the facilities for taking the swabs, whether scrapping you require from the vulva or even, and sent to the pathology lab. So this is one of the simple way to set your room for designate case there. But the time has come forward that some other things are coming, because the various treatments are also there. So another in inclusion of this colposcope, I think all gynae OPDs have their own colposcope, and all trainings are going on, and especially in this COVID time to eradicate the cervix, and so many trainings have been done. And this instrument is, I think it's not a very costly, and it is very important instrument to prevent these cancers. So this can be trained, but the training is required for that. Then another, we come to other biofeedback machines, functional magnetic stimulators, because the condition of that having the pain which is not responded, vulval pain are there. And if we come to that, if stress urinary incontinence, because the urethral opening is into the vulval area, so vulvovaginal part, we go that, then stress urinary problem, which we usually all, whether the stress or urge incontinence, all these are likely, we say that these are the unspoken problems. They are not coming up and not discussing with that. But if we just make aware them, put some leaflets to give our routine gynae patient that you read that these may be the problem and this you should come out and get your treatment done. Then this another one is, yeah, I know this is one of the very costly treatment, but still the use of this, I'm not talking about that only the cosmetic part of that, but the functional diseases of the vulva, where even the Dermatological Society, they have given their guidelines, and North American Society of Menopause, they have given that the laser is the one of the treatment which is very useful for the vulval conditions, especially in the lichen sclerosis. We all know that this is sometimes a familial also. And the various conditions are like that, which can be treated with these modalities. So these are the things which we can go. So there are some indications, like I'm just talking about the functional conditions, that is the lichen sclerosis, anogenital warts. If you go with that small incision in the OPD procedure, you can remove vulvodynia, provoked vestibulodynia, vulvobulitis, non-specific vulval pruritus. This can be treated with this, because if the patient is using steroids for the long time, we all know the keratinized skin of the vulva labia majora becomes hyperkeratinized, and the labia minora, which becomes a thinner and thinner day by day. And even a small scratch can give the ulcer. And then if the patient going to the another consultant and they say, oh, you may have the cancer. And to just say a one word of the cancer to a patient, the whole family, even if you are asking them to go for the pap smear, they say, what is the pap smear? We say that this is the screening for the cervical cancer, and the whole family, you get the phone calls from the son and daughter, all, my mother have cancer. So this fear of cancer is so many there. So this, we should come out and give our patients the different option. It's not necessary everyone will have, but we should develop our referral scheme. So those are colleagues doing these procedures, we should send them. Yes, definitely the time has come. The aesthetic is also coming up. And so labioplasty, because the labia, what are the different shape and size, we don't know that which is normal, because there's so many variety of the labias. If go in onto the see the literature, a different size, it is only on the patient's concern, the lady's concern, how they feel that. Then Mons enhancement, then skin lightening, tightening, these are coming up. These are the branches. If you have this knowledge, you can refer your patients. Otherwise, the patient will say that Google में तो ये पढ़ा था और इसके बाद आपको डॉक्टर कुछ नहीं पता है. And these are the various pictures this has been given. So which is the normal, which is the abnormal? Because in the literature, you see that there were so many things they have taken it as normal. But if patient having any discomfort or patient is interested in getting it reconstructed, then definitely we can go with this. So these are the best, the way to examine. We all know that we require all basic anatomy, and then we go with the skin, all the lesions. There are various charts and various atlas are available on the website. So it's my request to all my junior colleagues, especially the resident, they should always in the free time, they should see if they have seen any case in your OPD, which is abnormal, which is not responding, just to go with that and check that, take the photograph. Yes, medical photography, one of the things in the vulval lesions, especially before that, we have to take consent of the patient, and that we have to explain this is to be used for your further treatment, for your follow-up, and for the definitely at places where we want to use as our records also, and for the scientific case. So various procedures that, yes, light skin that can be done. Then there are, I'm not going in all details. These are the different methods of doing that lighting of that, because the time has come, everyone wants, but these instruments is very useful in, especially in cases of this aesthetic comes in the cancer survivors, which is the one of a special group where we want to treat them, because they are in breast cancer survivors. The vulvovaginitis is one of the problem which they are feeling. Again, that estrogen we are not able to give. So these are the modalities which can be offered them and then can be relieved from their genitourinary symptoms and all these menopause which we are getting because of this therapeutic things. Yes, definitely lichen sclerosis, we all know there is guideline. If patient is simply, you have diagnosed the lichen sclerosis, but it is not responding to your treatment, and if you suspicious, then definitely you take the biopsy, which I have explained that OPD procedure, we can go with the biopsy of in these cases. So we can just to differentiate whether it is simply a lichen sclerosis or it is a pre-malignant or malignant conditions. So this is again required in these patients. These are the various probes, and this, if you see, these are the lattice formation, and this can be given, and the patient responds to various itching of this because of the lichen sclerosis. So these are the various models. If you see, this is the one of the lady, you can say because of the lichen sclerosis, the deformity you can see. This patient is just of 25 years of age, having 2 children, and she was having this lichen since her age of 16 years. And if you see that, and then patient had, after their childbirth, it increased. Gradually, it was increasing and extended up to the back, and whole of the anal area is covered. And after the 3 sittings, she was able to have intercourse properly, and there was a proper lubrications. The vulvodynia, various conditions, which is again can be treated, because the option we have that we used to give the local Gilocan, but how long we can give. So these are the therapy. Yes, definitely psychotherapy is there, and other conditions we have to rule out. But the laser, or we go with the different HIFU and all, these are the modalities by which we can treat them. And these burning and all these warts are the different conditions you can do with the OPD procedures. This is a young girl having marriage after 15 days, and she came that we removed with the laser, and she responded because there was a fear. So no scarring and no all these things were there. So these are the OPD procedures we can, no scarring will be there. So this is the one of the sensitive part of body, and if maritally, then definitely this helps into these. These are the other conditions where the bleaching and all, we go with this. Then labioplasty is one of the conditions. If we go with this, yes, scarring will be less, so deformation will be less in this. Then I think the time, we have the short of time, there is a various algorithm which we can go with the diagnostic criteria. So detailed history, examination, these are all required. And then according to that, we have to scrutinize the vulvar skin for the outermost or innermost structure. So vulva, vaginal, labia majora, minora, and everything you plot it and diagrammatically go with that. So these are the all long part. If I think short of time, can I finish this here? Tulika?
Yes, madam, you can finish.
Yes, ma'am, you can. Yes, you can finish.
These are conditions, and these are the various conditions which by their handouts we can give the patients. So in this way, that the super specialty we can create in gynecology, we can create our own super specialty. If any of the medical board, when any of the university is not creating, we can create ourselves and go with that. As in infertility, we all know that nowadays we are having the FNB, but initially all this infertility specialists are, they're owned by their practice, their guidelines. And yes, Calcutta is the one of the city where the infertility has been, the treatment of infertility has been started. And so this, with this, I just finish this topic, and requesting all my junior colleagues and my residents that they should think of that. This is the one of the part which is very important, and we have to take care properly. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sir, you wish to make any comment?
Sudipta, you're
Professor-
muted. You're muted, Sudipta.
Sudipta, unmute yourself.
To
Yeah,
answer
now
this,
it's okay.
I'm very impressed with the lecture she delivered. Much of it has gone above my head, so I wouldn't like to pass a comment on
It's not.
it. But yes,
sir.
with the ease that you said that we all know this, I really felt amused by it.
But to my mind, sir, It is a new thoughts that Dr. Leela has introduced. I had my experience of having this sort of presentation and work in while we are all trained in UK. So that was an opportunity. But here we don't, we neither we have thought of such organizing vulval clinic, and so much of problems are there which needs to be reviewed. And as you see, Dr. Vass has highlighted, it is a sort of multidisciplinary team approach involving the not only the gynecologist, the physician, that of the dermatologist, the psychiatrist. So many experts to be involved. And the problems are not only that of the benign infective conditions or chronic dermatological conditions, there are areas of malignancy. And again, then vulva is the site of disease for many systemic disease, expression of systemic disease in the vulva also. So it has got enormous area of interest that we should, as a gynecologist, that we should think of, and maybe for the days to come, we need to think of initiating vulva special subspecialty of vulval clinic, like that we are doing as infertility or that of this other areas of subspecialty. So vulval clinic is an enormous area that we can think of and we can initiate this.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
the problem may be, do we have enough cases? That is one of the problems.
Sir, I think it is the matter of awareness that we create. Once it is done, as Dr. Leela has said, it is an area that often they come to know that this clinic is going to help me out of this problem. So probably they will come up.
Maybe, but we are very poor referring cases to others. We are
Yes, that
very
is the-
poor in that.
Yes.
Meaning, my experience of NHS in UK is that very easily they refer cases.
But I think
But in
Sir-
India, it is not like that.
presently things are changing.
Things are changing.
So yeah, you see that the endoscopic surgeons, endocrinologists, and physicians, we are in a habit of incorporating other subspecialties with the concept of multidisciplinary team approach that we are always stressing in our educational institutes teaching part. So probably concept will come up. There is no further delay to have this concept and to initiate such clinics.
But this
My
very
feeling is this.
thought of Dr. Leela Vyas doing a vulval clinic
Right, sir.
is something which is exemplary. And I
Sure.
thank her for
Leela, have you got any other information that anybody else in this our country that doing this vulval clinic?
Yes, sir. Especially those who have started aesthetic working in gynecology, cosmetic and aesthetic gynecology. Then we came to know that the machine initially, this laser or laser different, whether the CO2 or the RBM, or you go with the HIFO machines. They said that these are for the means, especially they promoted as SUI, you can go the vaginal regeneration. But there was a question that you all are going in a fashionable way. But when we started doing this, we gone through the literature, then we came to know that these are the tools which we can be used in the functional problems, not only the aesthetic part, but it is for the functional. So even I have experienced of this lichen sclerosis, which was not responded. The last is clobetasol, which is the ointment and we have that the literature says that you have to use the 30 gram in a month only. The patient use within a week and they come back. And then the skin becomes that. So the few of the things which we have watched, and then we came out that, yes, Dr. Narendra Malhotra, he is also doing, Ragini is on that.
Ragini is doing, I heard that Ragini is doing.
And, one is Dr. Preeti Jindal, she has started in UP, so many persons, because now there's some other machines are also in Bombay also. The Dr. Sejal, she is doing. So initially, yes, everybody was thinking that it is only the vaginal regeneration. But once you come across all this literature and the machine is in your hand and the different probes are there, we read it and then come out that this is very useful for the functional diseases in cases of, and especially in the vulva. If a big, you just cut with it, this and these warts for the warts, with that means if multiple warts are there, you just coagulate with them and skin comes freshened up. So these are the various users are there in these conditions. So we need that specialized things that we think of that, and then definitely, as sir said, we have to come out with the referral system.
Hiralal, if I may add, actually with the onset of cosmetic gynecology and laser and the radio frequency, this has actually rekindled interest in this. But one of the earliest vulval clinics in this country in the private sector was done at Hinduja Hospital, Mumbai, set up in late 90s by Dr. Ashwini Bhalerao Gandhi and the dermatologist at Hinduja Hospital. That was way before cosmetic gynecology took its birth.
Yes, yes.
I haven't heard that much, but I don't know whether they are continuing this up. You see, there are Leela, there are the problems of vulva. Say, for example, the vulvodynia is a really miserable situation. The patients often move from one to another. Neither the physician know what to do, nor the patient think where to go. This is real.
They are going to the neurologist.
Yeah. Psychiatrists, neurologists, and the patients are fed up, and we are also fed up. So it needs to be attended, it needs to be thought of, it needs to be organized treatment. My feeling is this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyhow, thank you very much, Leela, giving this new concept and new ideas and new thinking about this area of treatment and the problems and the management. Thank you once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vyas, for a very enlightening and eye-opener, as Dr. Tulika has mentioned. We have a lot of compliments for that lecture, because really it's one of the rare lectures we get to hear about how to set up this clinic. And there are a couple of questions which I would just address. Again, a compliment to you by Vibha Galot. Beautiful presentation, ma'am. I'm going to start a colposcopy and vulval clinic. Please advise whether any guidelines have been set up for this or not. And secondly, how much does a laser machine cost?
Yes, the guidelines we are making with this association in SAG, we are trying to make all guidelines, but international guidelines are available. And yes, machine is very costly, but the different options now, I think, available in market with some China made, but the safety of the patient is, again, we have to check and then proceed with that. I think why not all the juniors, they come together and start in the group practice, then they can help their patients, because to purchase a one person, it becomes a very costly.
True, true.
Because means around 45 to 50 lakhs.
Thank you. I don't think we have any other questions. And so with that, we'll close this session. So thank you once again, madam, for giving this wonderful talk and enlightening us on this much needed area. And secondly, to also say that we have Dr. Shebanti Goswami also in our city, who's doing cosmetic vulval surgery. Yeah.
One
so thank
other
you.
Or something, one guy, he has also started one.
Rajiv.
Rajiv, yes.
Rajiv.
So thank you, Dr. Vyas, and thank you once again, Dr. Sudeep Chakravarti and Dr. Hiralal Konad for chairing this session. Thank you. So we move on to our much awaited oration, the 36th Subhash Chandra Bose Memorial Oration. And to conduct this oration, may I call upon our President and Secretary to the virtual podium. Next slide, please. So the chairpersons are President Dr. Bhaskar Pal and Honorary Secretary Dr. Ram Prasad De. Welcome, President and Secretary. Though they don't need any introduction, but as a formality, I'll just introduce Dr. Bhaskar Pal. He is a Senior Consultant Gynecologist at the Apollo Hospitals, Kolkata, Honorary General Secretary of IAGE, Chair AICC-RCOG East Zone, Chair Elect AICC.
I think just please drop it anyway, it's an old CV.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us, and Dr. Ram Prasad De. And he's a professor of the College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Child Health, Honorary Secretary for our society, and as you can see, has multiple awards and achievements to his credit, a number of publications. So welcome, President and Secretary, and I'll hand over the session.
Ram is also the national corresponding editor of the Indian Journal of Obs and Gynae. Good evening. It's a proud moment for the Bengal Obstetrics and Gynecological Society to have Dr. Alpesh Gandhi, President Foxy, with us this evening. In normal times, Foxy President would deliver the DC Datta Memorial Oration at the annual conference of the Bengal Society. And we have had our last annual conference in end of 2019, and we do not think we are going to have another conference till end of this year. And that is why we had to request Dr. Gandhi to deliver this oration virtually. These are strange times. Almost every day we have somebody from Gujarat coming into Calcutta in the election season, but we doctors are too scared to invite people physically to have a meeting. But thank you, Dr. Gandhi. And this is the 36th Dr. Sudhir Chandra Bose Memorial Oration in the name of an icon of obstetrics and gynecology in Bengal. And may I request Dr. Tulika Jha, our clinical secretary, to read the biodata of Dr. Sudhir Chandra Bose, please.
Thank you, Bhaskar. May I have the slides, please, Dr. Yanta? It is an absolute honor for me to share. It's an absolute honor for me to share the life and times of a legend as huge as Dr. Sudhir Chandra Bose. Dr. Bose was born in August 1902 in Sylhet, Bangladesh, which was East Bengal at in those times. And from the very next slide, from the very beginning, he had a very good, brilliant. He was a brilliant scholar throughout his career, and he passed his matriculation exam from Collegiate School, Dhaka in 1918. He passed his ISC exam from Dhaka School in 1920, and he passed BSc Honours in Physics with very high marks and rank in 1922. But he always, next slide, but he always wanted to be a doctor, and he was always interested in pursuing medicine. And so he joined Medical College, Bengal, where he performed brilliantly throughout. In 1926, he became the Goodeve Scholar, and in 1928, he passed the MB exam with honors. I think it was called credit at that point of time. After passing his MB, he joined the Bengal Medical Service as RS of Eden Hospital in 1929, and it was a prestigious post in those times. From 1930 to 1937, Dr. Bose worked in close association with stalwarts like Colonel Dr. Green Armitage and Colonel Dr. Gao. He developed extraordinary competence in surgery during those years. He then went on to the United Kingdom in 1937 and completed the MRCOG and FRCS there in a very short time. Next slide. On returning from the UK, he joined Medical College in a supernumerary post, and he was a teacher of Obs and Gynae in a Campbell Medical School till 1946. He was awarded the FRCOG degree in 1948. In 1947, he became the professor of clinical midwifery in Medical College. He then became a professor of Obs and Gynae in Medical College in 1951. And in 1953, he became the professor director, which is actually the head of the department, equivalent to head of the department of Obs and Gynae in Medical College, where he continued till his last day of service. There are a few pictures from his times when he was in MCH in Medical College in Eden Hospital. This picture is with Professor Sudhir Bose and Sister Lewis. Next slide. This is during the time of the retirement of Dr. Colonel Gao. Next. This was when Dr. Colonel Gao was returning to England in 1938. Not very clear, but you can get the idea. He was also a very able and respected administrator, and he became the principal and superintendent of Medical College and he was in that post from 1957 to 1960 for 3 full years. Next. He was also associated with several professional organizations. He was member of the Indian Medical Council, the executive member of the Indian Federation of Obstetrics and Gynecology. Next. And something very interesting, which I noted when I went through the slides, he was a passionate sports person. He was a member of the Wari Athletic Club in Dhaka, which is basically a football club. He was a member of the Greer Sporting Club of Calcutta and a leading team man of Medical College many a times in many a sport. He had many other astonishing qualities. He was a self-made man. His mission was to apply his knowledge and render his service to the diseased people who needed it badly. He was a friend, philosopher, and guide to his students. He was great as a physician, but a greater person. And he was like a father to many. But he never forgot his roots. He went back to Dhaka, and he also was a teacher of Mitford School, Dhaka. In between his, wherever he used to go to Dhaka, it seems he also used to teach over there. Next. But sadly, he left for his heavenly abode on August 30, 19. I can't see that. But he will always live in our memories as a surgeon par excellence, an illustrious personality, a man of discipline, and someone to emulate. So we move. So the 36th, Dr. The Sudhir Chandra Bose oration, and this was Dr. Sudhir Chandra Bose for all of you. So over to you, Bhaskar.
Thank you, Tulika.
Unmute.
For those of us who have worked at Eden Hospital, we've all heard stories about Professor Sudhir Chandra Bose. And what is amazing is that he lived only for 58 years and he achieved so much in that short period of time. We are also honored to have Dr. Sudeep Chakraborty, who in his time was also the Goodhue Scholar of Eden Hospital. We are proud to have Dr. Alpesh Gandhi to deliver the oration today, and may I request our Honorary Secretary, Dr. Ram Prasad De, to introduce Dr. Gandhi to the audience.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bhaskar, President. Please allow me to share. Yes. Is okay? I hope so. It is okay. Hello.
I can
Yes,
see.
it's fine. It's fine.
Yes,
It's fine, Ram. It's fine, Ram.
Good evening, everybody. Respected members of Bengal Obstetrics and Gynecological Society, my friends, seniors, and colleagues, as well as the viewers. On behalf of the Bengal Obstetrics and Gynecological Society, as a secretary, I take the opportunity to welcome you all to the 36th Dr. Sudhir Chandra Bose Memorial Oration today, 2nd April 2021. We are fortunate enough to have with us to deliver this doctor, none other than Dr. Alpesh Gandhi, current president of FOGSI, and he is going to deliver on preconception and care, newer concept relevant to high-risk pregnancy. It is my privilege and honor to introduce Dr. Alpesh Gandhi, President FOGSI of 2020-21, DGO, Fellow of Indian College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and Honorary Fellow of Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. Dr. Alpesh Gandhi, President FOGSI and resource person for FOGSI, good clinical practices, pregnancy care in COVID-19, prepare national registry for pregnancy with COVID-19, infection and resource person to prepare so many operational and establishment of guidelines and obstetric HDU and ICU under Government of India, resource person to prepare FOGSI, dystocy, good clinical practice and research guideline and hypertensive disorder in pregnancy. He also a resource person for preparing Government of India guidelines on optimizing the cesarean section rate, which is currently very, very high. He has so many awards and honors. RCOG has awarded him with the Honorary Fellow of Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. He's received the Best Society, Best RCH Activity and Best Publication Award from FOGSI. Awarded oration and keynote address by many societies across all over India as well as internationally. Recently awarded with Special Appreciation Award by Integrated Health Council of India for FOGSI effort of Anemia Mukt Bharat program, which is all we know, and its Community Connect program as well as 90 days continuous campaigning. FOGSI has made the India Book of Record for virtual walkathon on the Mother's Day, 10th May 2020 under his leadership as a president. His book, he is a good academician. His book on principal critical care in obstetrics is available more than 5,000 world-renowned medical libraries, as well as translated in other languages like Chinese and Spanish languages. He was convener of the AICG 2017 at Ahmedabad. We can all cherish from our memory that we have all attended this conference. He was invited to write a chapter on sudden obstetric collapse in Figo's continuous textbook. He did his hospital management course in Indian Institute of Health and Management and Research from Jaipur. He is a practicing gynecology, particularly high-risk pregnancy in the Ahmedabad as well as India since last 29 years. He's prepared good clinical practice and sexual and reproductive health as well as gynecology with COVID-19 pregnancy, COVID-19 infections. So may I invite our today's orator, Dr. Alpesh Gandhi, President FOGSI, to deliver his oration, that is 36, Dr. Sudhir Chandra Bose Memorial Oration, topic being the preconceptional care and newer concept relevant to high-risk pregnancy. Yes, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Ram. Before Alpesh starts, there are three things I must add about Alpesh. From the time we are seeing Alpesh as a committee chairperson, as a vice president, he has been zealously supporting the cause of obstetric HDUs in India at a time when it was almost an unheard of concept. And by the time, over the years, he's taken over as president, there are obstetric HDUs in so many hospitals in India, and that is essentially because of his persistence and his pursuance. The second thing is that Alpesh took a very ambitious project of cervical screening for women of CRPF staff. And it happened just as COVID was hitting this country. And in spite of that, he could lead the entire team to successfully completing that project. And the third and the most important one is it was about 2 months into his tenure as FOGSI president when COVID-19 pandemic struck. And nobody possibly ever thought that Alpesh should turn this, along with his team, this big disadvantage to a huge advantage. I think in no other year has FOGSI reached out to so many people, so many members in the country and abroad, so many common people in public awareness programs just because of utilizing the virtual platform. And Alpesh has been the guiding light, guiding his team of vice presidents, committee chairpersons through this. I think that's a wonderful job, and we are proud of you, Alpesh, for doing this in your tenure. Over to you for the oration.
Thank you, Dr. Bhaskar, for the kind words and kind appreciation. Thank you, Dr. Ram Prasad De, for the kind introduction, generous introduction. I am thankful to my close friend, Dr. Bhaskar, President of Bengal Society, Dynamic Secretary, Dr. Ram Prasad De, and Team Bengal Society, which is a dream society for me, which is having a high academic standards and very high academic activities, for awarding me this prestigious oration in the name of memory of a legend, Dr. Sudhir Chandra Bose Memorial Oration, who was a great teacher, a great professor, a great surgeon, and who had worked with Professor Green Armitage. I am humbly honored and do not have words to express my feelings and happiness for this oration. Can you see my slides? Hello?
No,
Yes,
we cannot. We
No.
can
Okay.
see your
No,
computer,
no,
but
sir.
not your slide. We can see a Word
Yes.
document.
What document?
Yeah, Word document.
No, not Word doc. You said.
Sir, you have to stop
I
sharing
think-
this. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
we
yes.
can see it now.
Now
Yes,
we have
yes.
it.
Now you can.
Yes.
Okay. So namaste. I bring greetings from FOGSI. I'm going to speak on a topic: preconceptional care. In the year of 2189, nations made a promise to their people to free them from extreme poverty and multiple deprivations. And this was known as MDG. India was required to reduce MMR to 109 by 2015 as per MDG goal. And to achieve this, our priority was to bring more and more pregnant women to the hospital for safe delivery, because during those days, hospital delivery rate was only 27% in 1998. Several schemes were introduced in India. Because of the several schemes and because of the efforts by professional organizations like FOGSI, and because of a revolutionary scheme, Janani Suraksha Yojana, which was introduced in India, MMR was improving in India. It was improving every year by 15 to 20, and at this pace of improvement in maternal mortality rate, it was expected that we would be able to achieve MDG by 2015. Hospital rate was continuously improving and it has reached to 84% in 2015. But as here we can see, after 2011, the improvement in maternal mortality rate was not so good. And in 2011, it was 178, and in 2015, it has reached only 262. Why this observation? Why the progress in improvement in maternal mortality stopped? Now more and more women are reaching to the hospital. Our doctors are available at hospitals. They are dedicated, they are experienced, and mothers are at the hospital even though maternal mortality rate was not improving. This was because of lack of quality obstetric healthcare in our hospitals. India is one of the countries having the highest incidence of preeclampsia, eclampsia, PPH, IUGA, diabetes, septicemia, and so many other pregnancy-related complications. But sad part is the case fatality rate was significantly high. And why this observation in India? This is again because of lack of quality obstetric healthcare in our hospitals. As per WHO, in India, the prevalence of near miss cases is nearly 8.23%. It is very high. And then Foxy has identified the lack of quality obstetric healthcare in India. Foxy has done lots of advocacy, and government of India then also realized. And now, fortunately, we have guideline on obstetric HDU and ICU, which was published in March 2016, and we have another guideline, operational guidelines on obstetric HDU ICU, which was published in 2017. First revolution was occurred in Indian obstetrics when Janani Suraksha Yojana was introduced. It has brought down the maternal mortality rate. Of course, it was not desirable, and hospital delivery rate was increased. But now with the introduction of obstetric HDU and ICU in Indian obstetrics, again second revolution occurred, and now in 6 states we already have achieved SDG goal, and in 10 states the MMR has been reduced to less than 100, and now again we are expecting that we would be able to achieve SDG by 2030. Throughout this journey of Indian obstetrics, we realized that initially it was thought we would be able to reduce maternal and fetal mortality if patient delivers at hospital. But then we realized it is not enough. Then we realized the importance of good emergency obstetric care. Again, maternal mortality rate reduced, but we could not reach to the desirable level. Then we understand the importance of quality obstetric healthcare in the form of vital backup of obstetric HDU and ICU. And now we reach to the MDG goal or SDG goal in some of the states. But again, now as a professional organization, we should always look ahead, and we should try to find the ways how we can make India equal in maternal mortality rate to the developed world. In developed world, it is less than 20 or 30. So our next goal, our next aim is to bring maternal mortality rate. Once we achieve SDG goal, then we should try to reduce it to below 30. And how we can achieve that? Then gradually we have come to further realize that the best prenatal and quality care will not be adequate to reduce the mortality and morbidity in several certain situations, because sometimes women enter into pregnancy with so many pre-existing conditions for bad obstetric outcome. And thus we arrived at a significant concept of preconceptional care and medicine. What is preconceptional care and medicine? Preconceptional medicine is now developing into a new branch of obstetrics. It is recognized as a preventive obstetrics of the primary kind. It requires more insights into patient history and examination before she conceived. And the aim of preconception care is to promote health of women before conception in order to reduce preventable adverse pregnancy outcomes. It refers to interventions that aim to identify and modify biomedical, behavioral, and social risk to pregnant woman and her baby before and immediately after conception occurs. We all know that prevention is always better than the cure. And WHO has also identified its importance and has developed a package of preconception care intervention, and it was released in 2012. At this juncture, I would like to bring to your kind notice some of the eye-openers to understand why preconceptional care is required and important. 4 out of 10 women report that their pregnancies are unplanned, and so essential health intervention is too late in 40% of pregnancies. Perinatal deaths are 50% higher among babies born to mothers less than 20 years. And we all know that India is one of the countries having higher incidence of early marriages. Up to 10% of pregnancies among women with untreated gonococcal infections result in perinatal death, and up to 35% of pregnancies among women with untreated gonococcal infections result in low birth weight infants. And gonococcal infection is also very prevalent in India. Maternal nutrition is very important, has very important role, and maternal undernutrition, iron deficiency, anemia are one of the major risk factor which accounts for at least 20 to 30% of maternal deaths directly or indirectly through cardiac failure or preeclampsia or antepartum hemorrhage or postpartum hemorrhage or sepsis. And we all know that in India, the incidence of anemia is 52% in pregnant women. Female genital mutilation increases the risk of stillbirth and neonatal death by 15 to 55%. In the absence of intervention, rates of HIV transmission from mother to child increase, and it is between 15 to 45%. And if intervention is done, then the rate decreases to below 1%. We can say nearly it is like zero, and we can eliminate this transmission. Pregnancy is absolute or relative contraindicated in certain conditions like severe mitral stenosis, pulmonary hypertension, chronic uncontrolled hypertension, uncontrolled type 2 diabetes mellitus, and many other such medical disorders or conditions where pregnancy may be relative contraindications. India is one of the countries having highest incidence of stillbirth, with 5,92,000 stillbirths out of 27 million babies born every year. It accounted for 22.6% of global burden of stillbirth in 2015 in India, and having the highest number of stillbirths as per the Lancet. So we need to discuss, we need to counsel with the patient, we need to take care of, we need to correct the deficiencies, we need to correct the reasons of stillbirth, we need to discuss with mother, and we need to develop or plan strategies for prevention of recurrent stillbirth during the preconception period. It's a neglected tragedy, an unfortunate event. India is one of the country having highest number of preterm birth. 3.5 million preterm birth occurs in India every year, and it is on the top #1 country across the world. We know that when there is first pregnancy, first delivery is at term, then the chances of subsequent preterm birth is only 4.4%, whereas in first pregnancy delivered as preterm, then the possibility increases of preterm delivery is 7.2%, and if first and second both pregnancy turned into preterm delivery, then the risk increases to 28.4%, significantly high risk of preterm delivery. And it's a major public health problem. It accounts for 43.7% of all neonatal deaths in India, and that is why we need to counsel with the patient during the preconception period before second pregnancy about the possibility of the preterm and measures which will be required to prevent preterm birth. At this juncture, I would like to discuss few cases. I will not go in detail of the antenatal history of intrapartum management because I am more interested today in preconceptional management or what could have been done to prevent this catastrophe in mother during preconception period. So I would just briefly mention about the history. A 23-year primary in 37 weeks of pregnancy admitted with dyspnea. She was diagnosed to have rheumatic heart disease and severe mitral stenosis before conception. After admission, she was treated with diuretics, verapamil, and oral penicillin. Cardiology consultation and echocardiography was performed, and it confirmed severe mitral stenosis, and she was suitable for balloon mitral valvotomy. She went into CCF, remained in failure despite treatment, delivered a healthy baby after cesarean section, and was ventilated overnight. She was stable for 24 hours but developed refractory pulmonary edema and succumbed 2 days after cesarean section. What could have been done to save this mother during preconception period? A cardiologist reference and maternal echocardiography could have been advised, planned, and performed during preconceptional period and during the early pregnancy, or if by chance if we miss during preconception period, then it should be performed during the early pregnancy. And if ejection fraction is found to be less than 30%, pregnancy carries a very high significant maternal mortality rate, risk of 60 to 70% of mother's life. In such cases, we cannot allow pregnancy to continue. We should offer termination of pregnancy. Such pregnancy should be terminated. Mother should then undergo balloon mitral valvotomy. After the procedure of balloon mitral valvotomy, once again, cardiology reference should be done, echocardiography should be performed, and if it is more than 45%, then only we can allow her for pregnancy. A 24 years gravida 2 presented with right heart failure at 25th week. Past history of primary pulmonary hypertension 3 years earlier, and she was advised against pregnancy. First pregnancy was terminated at 3 months on advice of cardiologist, was again advised for MTP at 5 weeks of present pregnancy, but she opted to continue pregnancy at her own risk. Antenatal visits were regular. She went into spontaneous labor. She delivered vaginally, developed fever on day 3, breathlessness on day 4, chest pain on and was put on parenteral heparin, and she failed to improve and died on postpartum day 9. Again, what could have been done to save this mother during preconception period or during early pregnancy? Pulmonary hypertension constitutes a contraindication to pregnancy. Any symptoms of chest pain or exertion or syncope may be a manifestation of pulmonary hypertension, and we should be very much watchful in such conditions. Pulmonary artery pressure may be estimated using non-invasive echocardiography testing. High suspicious cardiology reference, maternal echocardiography, and MTP would have probably saved her life. So during preconception period, we should try to identify if mother is having any pre-existing cardiac problem or not. If she is having any pre-existing cardiac problem, then we should try to evaluate the severity of the cardiac problem as the risk factor in relation to the expected hemodynamic changes of pregnancy. And we should try to identify if any intervention is required or not. And if any intervention is required to improve cardiac status prior to pregnancy, then we should offer this intervention to the to the woman. And for some women, pregnancy may worsen their cardiac condition and functional capacity, and this has to be kept in mind always during preconception period if mother is having any symptoms or if mother is having any established pre-existing cardiac problem. There are certain contraindications and certain relative contraindications for pregnancy if mother is having any of these cardiac problems, and these are the potential risk what can happen to this mother, and we should counsel during preconceptional period with mother and her relatives regarding the absolute presence of any absolute contraindication or any relative contraindication and severity and potential risk. When patient is having chronic hypertension, the potential risk of pregnancy, labor, delivery should be discussed, counsel with patient and her family during preconceptional period. We should counsel that it's a high risk pregnancy, can develop complications, she may require frequent investigations, she may require prolonged stay, she may require induction or termination or cesarean section, or she may have any pregnancy related complication, or she may require admission in obstetric HDU ICU. This all should be discussed before pregnancy so that we can plan, and we should try to control hypertension during preconceptional period. Try to control pre-existing hypertension. If required, modified and optimize the drugs required. If she is on atenolol or on S inhibitors, it needs to change to other alternative antihypertensive drugs. If she is on varapamine, then it is to be changed as it is a teratogenic, and if given in first trimester. And we should anticipate complications, early onset eclampsia, IUGR and other complications, and we should try to keep our setup also ready. We should try to counsel with patient to make her ready for all these possible complications. 40 years primary with BMI 35 was admitted at 38 weeks with pain in abdomen. She had regular antenatal checkups. She had a cesarean section for fetal distress and under spinal anesthesia. No antenatal or intranatal complication. On 4th postoperative day, patient became dyspneic. She was given steroid and bronchodilator. She was shifted to ICU. By that time, she was in shock. She was intubated and put on ventilator. But within 20 minutes of onset of symptoms, patient was declared dead. The final diagnosis which was declared was pulmonary embolism. And again, high BMI, we all know that can lead to hypertension, GDM, thrombosis, pulmonary embolism. She may require additional investigations, precaution, longer time of thromboprophylaxis. We should counsel all this possibility during preconceptional period. And if patient is having BMI more than 35, and if she is also having any comorbidities such as diabetes or cardiac problems, she should be offered bariatric surgery. We should advise her for the weight loss, and weight loss after bariatric surgery may reduce the risk of complication also. But if she has undergone bariatric surgery, then again it is ideal to delay pregnancy for 1 year, as this is the phase of rapid weight loss, and all patients with history of bariatric surgery should be screened for nutritional deficiencies such as iron, folate, vitamin B12, D, and calcium. So we should counsel to look for the weight for the weight loss of weight, and try to reduce BMI before she conceives. A patient of 27 years came with history of 4 months amenorrhea with SLE. Mid-trimester MTP was performed. Patient was discharged from the hospital on the same day. She developed, it is a routine practice to discharge a patient after performing MTP within a few hours. She developed intracranial hemorrhage 5 days after MTP, followed by coma and death. Available history show that she was having SLE. It is well known that relapse of SLE can occur not only after delivery, but even after MTP. The risk of lupus flare during pregnancy is increased dramatically in women with active lupus in the 6 months prior to conception. It can likelihood of flares in 15 to 65% of cases, and probably admission in obstetric HDU for a prolonged period to keep the patient in hospital under close watch on her hematological and immunological parameters before discharge, and higher dose of prednisolone probably could have saved her life. And when patient is having such type of complications or any disease like SLE, we should not discharge the patient immediately after performing MTP. We should counsel all these possibilities during preconception period, that you have a narrow period, you have a flare-up or active lupus just in the last 6 months, and there is a possibility of flare of SLE or lupus, so it is advisable not to have pregnancy during this period. We should counsel all these things during preconceptional period to save her life. A 27-year-old patient with gravidity 2 abortion 1 known case of diabetes was on oral hypoglycemic agents. History, she was having one DNA at 8 weeks before missed abortion, and this time she came directly at 22 weeks with FBS 150, PP2BS 220. Sonography was advised. A lethal cardiac anomaly was identified. Baby delivered with a cardiac anomaly, died after a few hours. Again, when HbA1c is less than 7%, congenital anomalies risk approaches to general population, but when it is more than 10 or 11%, it corresponds to a risk of fetal anomaly as high as 25%. So when it is uncontrolled diabetes during preconception period and HbA1c is more than 10 or 11, then out of 4, 1 fetus will have anomaly and structural anomaly, congenital anomaly, and therefore we should counsel during this preconception period. We should try to control diabetes during preconceptional period, and this is an interesting table which compare reason of the incidence of anomalies in patients with preconceptional care, without preconceptional care, when patients were having diabetes mellitus. And we can see that when preconceptional care was provided, it was between 0 to 22.5%, and anomaly rate was significantly high from 4.2% to 12% when preconceptional care was not provided. So the risk increases to 4 to 5 times in case of pre-existing diabetes if preconceptional care and counseling and medicine is not provided. So during preconceptional period, we should try to evaluate medical history, obstetrical history, duration and type of diabetes, whether she is having any acute complications like infection or not, whether she is having any chronic complications like retinopathy, nephropathy, hypertension are there or not, and whether she is on any management or on insulin or not, and since long she is on insulin, whether she is knowing glucose monitoring or not. Everything we should try to evaluate all this history, and we should discuss the medical conditions, complications during pregnancy. Everything should patient and a relative during preconceptional period. A 27-year-old patient with gravidity 3 abortion 2, she came with 1 abortion at 8 weeks and 1 MTP at 18 weeks for congenital cardiac anomalies. Patient came directly at 7.5 months. Sonography was advised. A big open spina bifida was identified at lumbar region. Baby delivered with a spina bifida and died after a few days. Again, we all know that folic acid, B12, and vitamin B6 are the micronutrients are vital for programming of healthy life. And in India, deficiency of folic acid, B12 and B6 is very prevalent, and it can lead to many complications. In India, even it can lead, there is a 7.7-fold risk of preeclampsia when pregnant woman with hyperhomocystinemia, and there is a 3-fold increased risk of pregnancy-induced hypertension and abruptcy of placenta when there is hyperhomocystinemia. And in India, this prevalence of MTHFR is nearly 28 to 20%. So out of every 3 woman, 1 woman we can say is having this deficiency. So we should try to correct this deficiency during preconceptional period so that we can reduce the incidence of congenital anomalies and we can save the bad obstetric outcome. So it's a window of opportunity. We can also discuss and we can correct the improper diet, which can lead to premature birth, low birth weight, then inability to breastfeed and deformed babies and so many other complications. This is a period where we can correct this diet deficiency and we can counsel for the proper diet. We can also evaluate the vaccination status, particularly MMR, Tdap, HBsAg, varicella, influenza, hepatitis B virus and C virus infection is 10 times more than incidence of HIV. So it's an opportunity to know the vaccination status, and we should give, if vaccines are not taken, then we should give vaccines for rubella and all these viral infections, and so that we can prevent many other complications during pregnancy. It's a period where we can discuss and try to identify, evaluate whether she is having any habit of or not, whether if she is a chronic smoker or having habit of tobacco use, then it can lead to problems with placenta. It can lead to a premature delivery. It can lead to sudden infant death syndrome and some of the anomalies like cleft lip and cleft palate. And this is a period where they are more sensitive, they are health conscious, and they are ready to accept. We should take this opportunity, we should counsel with them, and we should advise them to stop tobacco use. Similarly, incidence of alcohol consumption is increased in India, and it is said now that 15 to 20% of Indian women are consuming alcohol, and it can lead to many other complications like fetal alcohol spectrum disorder can occur. It can have low birth weight, poor coordination, hyperactive behavior, difficult with attention, poor memory, learning disabilities, speech delays. Many complications can occur. So we can advise to avoid alcohol during preconception period and during pregnancy. Similarly, use of anti-epileptic drugs is associated with a greater baseline risk of fetal malformations during pregnancy. When treating pregnant women who have epilepsy, the risk of increased seizure frequency versus the risk of anti-epileptic drugs use must be counseled properly and should take decision. One important is about the pollution and toxin. It is a well-established fact that it affects both mother as well as fetus, and it can lead to a long-term effect also on a future generation. And unfortunately, India is the country, if we look at the 10 cities across the world having the highest incidence of air pollution, and then 5 to 7 cities are from India. So now as a obstetrician, it is our moral duty to educate our patient to take care of air pollutions so that adverse effects on pregnancy will not be there. A fetus, when exposed to air pollution and toxins, can suffer from miscarriage, birth defects, low birth weight, stillbirth, childhood cancer, thyroid dysfunction, cognitive impairment, neurodevelopment abnormalities, sudden infant death, asthma, Parkinsonism, premature aging, earlier onset of Alzheimer, many complications it can lead to. It can lead to short-term during pregnancy, immediately after, and even long-term lifetime complications it can lead to. And therefore, we should advise women during preconception period regarding the side effects of air pollution and toxins. We should advise avoid visiting areas where air quality index is high by checking daily air pollution forecast through mass media and stay indoor at home when the levels are high. We should advise avoid active and passive cigarette smoking, avoid cosmetics, avoid go to noisy places, avoid living near sewage incinerators and chemical manufacturing plants and crematoriums, avoid vaporizing during open air cooking with wood, and use exhaust fans in the kitchens to reduce air pollution from indoor cooking. So many things, simple measures. We need to counsel, educate her so that the complications, long-term and short-term complications, serious complications can be prevented just because of such simple measures. And so this is an important period, important opportunity. It's a window of opportunity where 7 integral components for preconceptional care can be performed. For mainly physical assessment of a couple should be done. Identification of risk factor related to pregnancy should be evaluated. Laboratory investigation should be offered. Vaccination status should be evaluated and vaccination should be offered. Counseling regarding pregnancy risk, severity of the possible complications, management options and reproductive alternatives should be discussed. Monitoring and correction of nutritional status should be conducted, and initiation of interventions when possible to provide optimum pregnancy outcome should be performed. So these are the 7 integral components of preconceptional care. And as an obstetrician, it is in our busy practice, we forgot such simple measures, preventive aspects. So we should look at this important aspect, preventive aspects. And these are the checklists. We can say these are the high risk important risk factors where we should try to evaluate whether patient is having any of this risk factor during preconceptional phase, from maternal age, anemia, obesity, malnourishment, mental illness, smoking, alcohol, substance use, chronic hypertension, diabetes mellitus, heart disease, endocrinal disorder, STDs, HIV, autoimmune connective tissue disorder, kidney disorder, diseases, chronic respiratory diseases, thrombotic, inflammatory, neurological disorder, violence, teratogenic drugs, toxins, genetic disorder. All this we should try to evaluate whether patient is having any of this risk factor or not. We should offer these investigations to both husband as well as wife, and ultimately we should try to find out the nutritional status, vaccination status, genetic status, environmental status, infertility, subfertility status, female genital mutilation, unwanted pregnancy, rapid successive pregnancies, sexual transmitted diseases, HIV status, interpersonal violence, psychoactive substance use, mental health status, tobacco, alcohol, any habits. So this is a window of opportunity where we can explore, evaluate, come to know about all this status. And this is also an opportunity for psychosexual counseling, personal hygiene. We can discuss the importance of personal hygiene and how they can take care of hygiene. And if before second pregnancy, we can also counsel for the contraception and the importance of lactation and family planning. So many things we can do. And at the end, I would say preconceptional care has a significant positive effect on health outcome, on obstetric outcome. It can reduce child mortality, it can reduce maternal mortality, it can reduce low birth weight, birth defect, it can reduce preterm birth, macrosomia, mental retardation, neonatal hypoglycemia, it can reduce hypothyroidism, childhood cancer, congenital and neonatal infections, it can reduce diabetes in future generation, it can reduce vertical transmissions of HIV, it can reduce underweight and stunting in children, and it can reduce breastfeeding related problems also. And we can say India is also a capital of diabetes, and we are also, we can say NCD is something like a tsunami, and as per the SDG goal, we have to reduce it to 30% by 2030. And this is an opportunity where we can come to know and we can prevent future generations from NCD also. So previously the diagram now has been changed. Previously it was believed for healthy babies, healthy mothers are required, but now it is believed that for healthy mothers, healthy woman is required. And so now the paradigm is healthy women for healthy mother and healthy mother for healthy baby. So it is an opportunity, and we should look at during preconception period to make the women healthy before she becomes mother. And this is the checklist which we are going to publish on our website. We have this year, we have completed checklist, and we came out with a checklist on 30 different conditions, obstetric conditions, and we are going to publish soon on this during this managing committee meeting on 17th April. And this is my suggestion is all the medical colleges should have at least preconceptional clinics at least once a week, because in routine antenatal OPD we do not have that much time because of a big problem patient load. So we should have a separate special some clinics like adolescent clinic, preconceptional clinic, preventive oncology clinic, and HIV and STD clinics. This separate dedicated clinics are required in all the medical colleges at least once a week. So the resident doctors will also be benefited. They will be trained. Our patients will also be taken care. They will also know that this is a special day where my care will be taken. In a busy OPD, it may not be possible. So there is a role of preconceptional clinics, care, counseling, and medicine. And it's of course a multi-specialty approach, because if we come across a cardiology problem or nephrology problem or any endocrino problem, allergical problem, then we require multi-speciality. So it's a big team approach is required, and it can also be provided before second pregnancy if patient did not come for preconceptional care and counseling before first pregnancy. And it's, of course, we can also get the family information, and we can counsel with the family also during this in these clinics. So in conclusion, today more and more often pregnancies are possible after treatment of gynecological, surgical, and fertility conditions, but the preconceptional aspects of these circumstances have often been underestimated or forgotten even today in their importance for overall good obstetric outcome. Time has come to rectify this mistake and situation. Preconceptional counseling, care, management would have made a difference to many mothers and many such cases. It is the need of the hour. I think it is an eye-opener for all of us, and preconceptional care involves a wide range of situations. The dream is to be able to address them in each and every patient, but the challenge lies in getting these women to come to us on time and providing them adequate time and motivation. So every health visit by a woman at a reproductive age should be used to make her aware of the need of preconceptional care. Our ultimate aim is improved maternal and child health outcomes in both short term and long term. It is said that if quality obstetric health care is provided in time, then we could save 80% of this pregnant woman. But now this is a time to think why they should become critically ill. In some of the mothers who entered into pregnancy with pre-existing medical disorder or bad obstetric outcome, and then they become critically ill, at least for those women, preconceptional care will save them from becoming critically ill. Therefore, I have discussed 5 cases in brief with all of you. So pre and periconceptional evaluation, counseling and intervention plays a significant role to prevent later intensive care admission, complication, and it will save mothers from becoming critically ill or high risk pregnancy. Once American past president Barack Obama declared that we did not come to fear the future, we came here to shape it. And being a professional organization, FOXY, and being a practitioner, being obstetrician, and being main policy stakeholder of women's healthcare in India, it is our moral duty to provide these facilities, this healthcare to all the women. By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Once Benjamin Franklin declared that a big section of society in our country is still unreached and underprivileged, deprived of benefits of healthcare, and it is our moral duty to provide this facilities, benefits of healthcare to these unreached and underprivileged women. Let us work together for FOXY 2020 theme, safety first for Indian women and FOXians. And I think preconceptional care can play a significant role of safety of so many of women and fetus and for the future generation. Let us work together to achieve SDG goal before 2025 rather than 2030. Thank you very much for awarding me this oration. Thank you very much for your patient listening and giving me this opportunity to share my views for the better outcome of obstetrics in India. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Alpesh Gandhi, for sharing with us how we can use preconception period as a window of opportunity, not only to improve pregnancy outcome, but also to improve the woman's health in general. I think traditionally we've been, most of us have gone through very busy medical schools and busy obs and gynae unit where we were more focused on treating rather than prevention. So prevention never actually always took a back seat. And I think as the world around us is changing, we need to gear up to preventive health as much as we have to take care of managing complications. Thank you very much for
This is a time
shedding
you-
light.
Yeah, this is a time of preventive obstetrics.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Preventive obstetrics, preventive gynecology, preventing NCDs, as you mentioned, that we can use preconception care and pregnancy with a aim at preventing NCDs in future, which is also a part of the SDG goals. As we do not allow any question in the orations, may I request Dr. Ramprasad, our secretary, to join me in presenting the virtual plaque to Dr. Gandhi, and please put that up on the screen.
Yes,
Alpesh Bhai will send the plaque to you to Ahmedabad. It will reach you at your home in Ahmedabad. Ram, please
you so
focus the
yes,
plaque.
yes. Thank you, our President, Dr. Alpesh Gandhi, for his
Before
beautiful
that,
oration. Thank you. I'm just as a appreciation from Bengal Obstetrics and Gynecological Society. You can see it, yes?
Yeah, yes.
yes, it's visible.
It reads, on behalf of the members of the Bengal Obstetric and Gynecological Society, it is a pleasure and privilege to honor Dr. Alpesh Gandhi, DD, DGO, FICOG, FRCOG Honorary, President FOXI 2020-21 for delivering the 36th Dr. Sudhir Chandra Bose Memorial Oration live on Friday, April 2, 2021 at Kolkata. And it is signed by yours truly and Dr. Ramprasad De, the Secretary of Bengal Obstetric Gynae Society. Over to you, Ram and Tulika.
Yes. Tulika, you have the
Yes, I can show
yes,
the
plaque.
plaque.
Yes, you can show the plaque also. Yes, I think we'll send to your home address in the next week. Yes.
I would just like to mention one thing. That was a passionate obstetrician speaking. The oration was very good, and we really need to put up these points because treatment has been going on, but prevention is the mool mantra now to improve our statistics and the health. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tulika. Thank you. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to meet so many friends virtually also.
Yes.
Because it is very difficult. We cannot meet physically. Of course, I would definitely love to come to Kolkata whenever the opportunity will be there. But thank you very much for giving this opportunity to meet all of you virtually. Thank you.
Thank you.
Once again.
Thank you.
Over to you, Tulika and Sita.
Thank you. Thank you, President FOXI, again for that wonderful oration to cover this exhaustive subject and to emphasize that we need a holistic approach to the patient and her family for a very important preconception care. Thank you once again for accepting our invitation and giving this oration. Thank you. Thank you, President, and thank you, President BOGS and Ramprasad, the Secretary. Thank you once again for conducting the session. And at the last but not the least, I would like to invite our Honorary Joint Secretary, Dr. Joyita Chakravarti, to propose the vote of thanks. Joyita?
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. We are extremely grateful to Dr. Alpesh Gandhi, the President of FOXI, for delivering the 36th Dr. Sudhir Chandra Bose Memorial Oration. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, Dr. Leela Vyas, for your wonderful talk. Thank you, Dr. Divya, for your interesting case presentation. Thank you, Dr. Konar, Dr. Sudip Chakravarti, for chairing the sessions. Heartfelt thanks to Dr. Jayanta Jana, Mr. Sudeep Bhurai, and the entire team of PharMed for being our academic partner. And last but not the least, thank you, the audience and all the participants who did take out time to be with us as usual in all our programs. Thank you, all of you. See you soon in our next program. Till then, take care. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Tulika, you please announce the next program before the.
Okay, before everyone leaves,
Yes.
block your time and date for 11th April. That's a Sunday in the evening because it's the World Safe Motherhood Day, and we have an interesting program lined up, almost a 2-hour program. So 11th April, it will start at 5 or 5:30 probably. So keep your time and date blocked for that day.
It's Sunday, possibly 6 p.m.
It's a Sunday. It's a
6
Sunday.
p.m., yeah.
Yes, 6 p.m. Just block your date for that, for the program. Okay.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
So it's over. Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Jana. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
আমরা কি offline?
Offline?